Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon. I think we're getting close to. It's a pleasure to be here today. Corey and I left snow in Minnesota, so it makes it extra special. In talking with a lot of you this morning, we realized that facilities directors, you guys have a lot on your plate. You're leading teams, you're managing people, and navigating the purchasing and procurement process, right? And so our goal today is to hopefully have you leave with a few tips, tools that will help navigate those conversations and streamline that process. So I'm going to just ask a couple questions with a show of hands. How many of you feel that you have too much money in your budget? Nobody. All right. How about too much time on your hands to get everything done? All right, so pretty common response when we talk and ask those questions. When you're procuring, you really have two decisions that you need to focus on. What are you going to buy, and how are you going to buy it? So on our agenda today is to talk about what is cooperative purchasing, what or why should you be interested, and what will your next step be? When you go back Tuesday, Wednesday, later on this week, what are your next steps? So, cooperative purchasing benefits. They provide competitively solicited and awarded contracts. We create efficiencies and savings, get you what you need when you need it, and enable to work with your local suppliers. For Sourcewell, for example, when we award at the manufacturer level, which hopefully allows you to then work with your local dealers, keeping that purchasing local and things like that.
So what we have here, I want to talk about is the traditional bid process or traditional solicitation process. You identify your need, you discuss it with procurement, and if you're lucky, you get to help develop that scope of what you're looking to purchase. That's when it goes out to advertisement. You lose basically all control. You wait for suppliers and vendors to respond, wait for that proposal opening. Procurement goes through and does their evaluation, makes their award. You wait through a protest period. And then finally, you get to issue that PO, get your supplies, your equipment, get things installed. It gets to be a long, drawn-out process, sometimes 9 months, sometimes a year, up to 18 months to go through that full process. With cooperative purchasing, you have the ability to really cut that in half in just the steps. You still have to identify your need, discuss with the procurement, get a game plan, then you can use a cooperative purchasing contract, cut that PO, receive your goods and services, greatly reducing that time.
Another big area where that's really helpful is with just the supply chain recently. I know everyone's feeling that a little bit more. Gets you on their list a lot quicker once you identify one of those first two questions. What are you going to buy? How are you going to buy it? So it gets you on that supplier's list earlier rather than waiting that 6 to 9 months when you do the process. So this is kind of a fun slide. It's the trending. So GovWin recently did some research on cooperative purchasing. And as you can see, since 2015, that spend has just increased dramatically. 2025, we're looking at $61 billion in cooperative purchases. So I think that really shows two things, well, three really. You don't have money, you don't have time, so you're relying on cooperative purchasing, but also that there's a level of trust with cooperative purchasing now. I think a number of districts have enough good, positive experience, and that message is being heard throughout. So there's enough trust with the procurement process. One thing I would caution though, there are others that see this increase, and so you're starting to get some pop-up shops. So it's important that you really vet those companies if they're coming to you and talking to you about their cooperative purchasing. Look at their process, or maybe encourage your procurement and finance offices to do that, but look at their procurement process and really validate who they are and how they're doing it. This is another fun slide. I'm just kind of showing you where the average spend is right now. Again, this is another GovWin research. So 40% is still being done by bids and RFPs, 20% with cooperative purchasing, 19% with statewide contract. I think this is interesting because there's been a lot of discussions about could you almost combine statewide and cooperative purchasing to look like 39%. Essentially, they work in the same ways. And a lot of times the statewide contracts, you may be using a Sourcewell contract, for example, because the states are also adopting Sourcewell contracts. And then again, you just still have that 21% of informal purchasing and sole sourcing.
I just wanted to highlight some of the popular categories for cooperative purchasing for facilities in the K12 world. So everything from building security, HVAC, flooring and paint, ground maintenance, janitorial supplies and services. In talking with some of you guys this morning, a lot of times you guys are taking over for transportation and fleet as well. So a lot of times that school buses, vehicles, all available through cooperative purchasing. Another thing I wanted to point out, you guys are probably very familiar with using cooperative purchasing to buy supplies, equipment, but really an increasing category with cooperative purchasing is construction. We have a program called EasyIQC. Other cooperatives have JOC, job order contracting, indefinite quantity construction. It's known by a lot of different terms, but this is really an area that's growing. It's not available probably in all states when it comes to cooperative construction laws, but it's really something that is really growing a lot. We partner with a third-party administrator, Gordian, who's actually here at this conference. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me or reach out to Randy or Alyssa with Gordian. But this is really something that's becoming more and more popular, and more agencies, especially with you've got a tight timeline to get something done. Now is the time that you can really look at construction procurement as another option. So really advantages of cooperative purchasing. Funny story, so Stephanie we were sitting out with somebody today and she was like, hey, we have a way to skip the bidding process or skip the solicitation process. And I'm like, that's my slide, Stephanie. We're not skipping it, we're satisfying it. It's being done on the front end by us instead of by the school districts. So Stephanie and I are government employees, we're public employees, and that's one of those things that needs to be there for cooperative purchasing to work. So you need a lead agency. In our case with Sourcewell, we are our own lead agency because we are government. But in other cases, some of our competitors aren't governments, but they get that lead agency that's either a school district or a government agency to actually conduct the bid, hold the contract, and then make it available to other school districts or government agencies across the country. Another great thing about cooperative purchasing, a lot of times right there on the website, all the procurement documentation readily available. When you're meeting with procurement, my suggestion, go ahead and print that stuff out. Print out the contract, print out the evaluation, and bring that to procurement when you're having that conversation. Arm yourself when you're going into war. Sometimes they seem like the gatekeeper and they're trying to shut you down. They just want to make sure that they're doing their job, and they don't want to end up on the front page of the newspaper, and nor do you. So just make sure, work with them, vet out the cooperative, and decide how you're going to make the purchase.
All right, so next steps. Decide what you need, right? Well, first question that we started off with. Secondly, we recommend, actually it's not on the slide, but talk with your procurement office. Make sure that they're on board with using the cooperative, and then that really opens it up to really streamline and shorten that process for you. It allows you to then go out, choose the suppliers, and request quotes. We always say, request quotes from multiple cooperatives. Hey, quote me off of every one so I can see and compare and get the best deal possible. Then you have that option to work with your dealer directly, your local dealer. And if you like what you get in the quote that you receive, you have that clear road to then make that purchase, really saving yourself a lot of time, money, frustration, all of that. All right, so that's it. Anyone have any questions? We have a few minutes left.
Yep. Let me bring the microphone to you, Karen.
Hi, Karen Goldmark, formerly of New York City Department of Education and now with GreenLink Education. So with all of the federal incentives for renewable energy and electric buses, I actually have been looking to figure out if you have those contracts yet. Are you going to have electric vehicles? Do you have them already? And what about PV installers and other renewable energy suppliers?
We do. We actually, yeah, I think we've been really on the front end of the electric vehicle. It's such an emerging market. And companies are coming up and you know, going out and being bought up. But yes, that's been a huge focus for us, actually for about 3 or 4 years now.
So, question. So, a lot of times when I'm engaging with vendors and just looking for solutions,
Yep.
one of the questions I do ask is, are you part of a co-op or are you part of a buy board? And what we find when we do use our co-ops, they typically still do an upcharge because they're going to the mom and pop shops, because the mom and pop shops have the materials and supplies that we need. The mom and pop shops are not part of the co-ops. So what is your recommendation, suggestion as to how to include those local entities that we actually need on board?
Yeah. Well, it's a hard question because, you know, for us, you know, buy boards is just in Texas. They have a little bit more ability to award to just smaller local agencies, but it was us doing national solicitations. We can still award to smaller mom and pop shops, but a lot of times we're looking to cover the whole country, and a lot of times we're awarding to manufacturers. It's really going to be contract specific because you're going to run into like a lot of the HVAC or those types are going to have, you know, their materials or their products on discount, and then have like a cost plus or something like that to get, you know, maybe the mom and pop that you need. So it's a hard question to answer just because it's very, very, I don't know,
Unique and specific to that
to that project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got a question in the back of the room. John, can you catch this mic?
I just wanted to piggyback on what she just said. I use Sourcewell contracts all the time. Again, I'm John Bailey from Chesapeake Public Schools, and I'm also the CEO for the National School Plant Management Association. So to really piggyback on her comment about these mom and pops. So there's over 430 or so contracts out through Sourcewell. So anytime I'm looking for something that I don't want to bid, put an RFP out, I contact my local rep, and then I get creative. So sitting beside me is Cheryl Quadro with Jensen Controls. I use them a lot in my school division. So I'll find out if there's a cooperative. Then I'll look to see who is on the list that I can use. And then I'll see, can I use another third party underneath them to do the work, which is my mom and pop. So I'll give you a good example of what I did. I did some replacement of LED lighting in 4 schools. This past summer, I'm actually still finishing up the projects. So I contacted Sourcewell. There is an energy management component in one of their contracts, and so I wrote it. So I found Jensen Controls, and I got with them and said, I want you to be the main, you know, GC general for the project. And I said, but I want you to use my third party, which was Independent Lighting, which is a local branch there in Chesapeake, because they're very good. They have a good price, but they weren't under a cooperative. And I feared that if I put this out to bid, they wouldn't win it, and I would just get something I didn't want. So I went through that process, and I got everything I wanted. I was able to use the contract, use the GC that I wanted, and actually get involved that mom and pop as well. So you can be creative in what you do. I do everything through them. I do preventative maintenance. They change my filters. I've wrote an energy contract. Jensen Controls has done that as well. White Fleet, you name it. If they have it, I use it.
Thank you, John. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, well, I guess we're out of time anyway, but thank you guys so much. Very informative presentation.